You know that feeling when you stand at a crossroads and your feet just won't move. When every direction looks both promising and terrifying at the same time, and you find yourself frozen there, caught between what was and what could be. I've been there, and I have a feeling that's exactly where you've been standing for quite some time now. Maybe you've been there so long that you've started to believe that indecision is just part of who you are. That hesitation has become your personality. That being unsure is simply your permanent state of being. But I want to gently push back on that thought today, because I don't believe that's true. I don't believe you were made to stand still forever. I don't believe your Creator placed that fire in your belly just for it to burn out in the waiting. Inside you right now, and you felt it even before you clicked on this video. Something small but undeniable. A whisper that says maybe, just maybe, you're finally ready. Not ready because you figured it all out. Not ready because the fear disappeared. But ready because you're tired, in the most sacred way possible, of going back and forth inside your own mind like a pendulum that never finds its center. I remember when I was younger in my faith, and by younger I don't mean just in years, I mean in understanding. I thought that making decisions meant having certainty first. I thought that if I just prayed hard enough, fasted long enough, waited patiently enough, God would send me a neon sign that told me exactly what to do. But that's not how it worked. And I suspect it hasn't worked that way for you either. What I've learned through years of walking this path is that God often speaks in stillness, not in shouting. And sometimes His guidance comes not through loud instructions, but through quiet permission. Permission to trust yourself. Permission to take the step even when your knees are shaking. Permission to believe that He's already gone ahead of you and prepared the ground for your feet. The book of Proverbs tells us that a person's heart plans their way, but the Lord directs their steps. There's something beautiful hidden in that verse if you really sit with it. It doesn't say God plans our way for us while we sit idle. It says we plan, we decide, we choose a direction, and then God meets us in the walking. Guides. He steers. But first, we have to move. I think some of us have been waiting for a door to open while standing in the hallway with our arms crossed. We've been asking God to show us the path while we refuse to put on our shoes. And beloved, that's not faithlessness. That's not a character flaw. That's simply being human. We hesitate because we care. We pause because the outcome matters to us. We struggle to decide because we don't want to disappoint the one who made us. But here's what I've come to understand in the quiet hours of my own wrestling. God is not disappointed in your hesitation. He's not frustrated by your questions. He's not pacing the halls of heaven, wondering why you're taking so long. He sees you. Weight you carry in making this choice. He sees how many times you've written down the pros and cons. He sees those nights you couldn't sleep because your mind wouldn't stop turning. And He loves you through every single moment of it. There's a verse in Isaiah that has carried me through some of my most uncertain seasons. It speaks of how God will go before you and make the crooked places straight. But what strikes me most about that promise is its timing. It doesn't say He will straighten the path before you decide to walk it. It says He will go before you, which means you're already walking, already moving, already committed. The straightening happens in the journey, not before it. I know you've been looking for guarantees. I know you've been asking for assurance that if you choose this path, everything will work out exactly as you hope. But faith has never been about guarantees. Faith is trust that keeps its eyes open. It's hope that walks even when the road ahead is covered in fog. It's love that says, I believe in the heart of God more than I believe in my own ability to predict outcomes. And here's where I want to get really honest with you. Some of the best seasons of my life came from decisions that terrified me. Choices that kept me up at night. Moments when I stepped out not because I was sure, but because I couldn't bear to stay still any longer. And not all of those choices led where I thought they would. Some of them led to unexpected places. Some of them led to lessons I didn't know I needed. Some of them led to closed doors. Doors that redirected me to better ones. But none of them were wasted. Not one single step was outside of God's ability to use for my good. The Apostle Paul wrote about being confident that the one who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. And I love that he uses the word completion rather than perfection. Because completion implies a process. It implies stages and seasons and chapters. It implies that we don't arrive all at once, but we move forward in phases. And sometimes a phase looks like finally saying yes after months of maybe. Sometimes a phase looks like closing a chapter you've been rereading for too long. Sometimes a phase looks like a younger soul who spent years in the in-between finally choosing to step through. I call you a younger soul, you. I call you that because there's something tender and forming in you still. Something that's learning how to trust its own instincts. Something that's discovering what it means to hear God's voice in the everyday noise. That's not immaturity. That's becoming. And becoming takes time. But here's what I want you to hold on to today. Becoming doesn't mean you have to wait forever to begin. Becoming happens in motion. It happens when you stop analyzing and start living. When you stop rehearsing and start speaking. When you stop imagining what might go wrong and start building what could go right. I think of the story in the Bible about the man who was paralyzed and brought to Jesus by his friends. The room was so crowded that they couldn't get through the door. So they climbed onto the roof and lowered him down through a hole they made. Now think about that for a moment. They could have looked at the crowd and said, well, it's not meant to be. They could have waited for a less busy day. They could have hesitated until the circumstances were more favorable. But they didn't. They made a way where there seemed to be none. And Jesus looked at that and called it faith. Not proper procedure, not patience in the traditional sense, but bold, determined, we're going to get there faith. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't something that falls from the sky. Sometimes the breakthrough is you finally deciding to tear through the roof. And I believe that's where you are right now. Not waiting for a less busy day, miracle that changes your circumstances. But becoming the miracle by changing your response to them. You've been praying for doors to open, but maybe the door has been unlocked this whole time. Maybe you've been standing there with your hand hovering over the knob, afraid to turn it. Afraid that if you step through and it doesn't look the way you imagined, you'll be stuck with regret. But I want to release you from that fear today. Not because I can promise you perfection on the other side, but because I know the one who walks with you is faithful even in imperfect outcomes. He doesn't waste your detours. He doesn't abandon you in your wrong turns. He meets you wherever you land and whispers, okay, let's work with this. I've seen that in my own life more times than I can count. Times when I thought I had made the wrong call. Times when I questioned my judgment and wondered if I had missed God's voice entirely. And yet, looking back now, I see how every single thread wove into something I couldn't have designed on my own. The missteps became lessons. The closed doors became redirections. The hard seasons became the soil for softer growth. And I know, when you're standing in the middle of the confusion, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like chaos. It feels like you're letting everyone down. It feels like the stakes are too high to get this wrong. But can I tell you something that someone once told me during one of my most paralyzed seasons? They said, "You're not as powerful as you think you are." Stung. It sounded harsh, but the more I sat with it, the more it freed me. Because it reminded me that I am not the sole architect of my destiny. I am not carrying the full weight of this thing called life on my shoulders. God is bigger than my best decisions, and He's bigger than my worst ones too. Your choices matter, yes, but they are not the final word. The final word belongs to the one who sees the end from the beginning, the one who turns mourning into dancing and ashes into beauty, the one who promises that in all things He works for the good of those who love Him, not in some things, not only when you make the right choice, in all things. That means your hesitation, your confusion, fear. He's working in it, through it, around it. And when you finally take that step, He'll be working in that too. There's a story I think about often when I'm counseling someone who's stuck between two paths. It's the story of Peter walking on water. Now we usually focus on the dramatic middle part where he starts to sink. But I want you to think about the moment before. Peter saw Jesus out there on the waves and said, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come." And Jesus simply said, "Come." Not come and here's a detailed map of how you'll stay afloat. Not come and I promise you won't feel afraid. Just come. One word, one invitation, one permission to step out of the boat. And the miracle didn't happen while Peter was still, sitting safely with the others. The miracle happened when his foot touched the water. When he chose movement over certainty. When he stepped into the unknown with nothing but a single word of invitation from someone he trusted. You've heard that same word. Maybe not audibly, maybe not in a dream or a vision, but somewhere in the quiet places of your spirit. Come. Come out of the endless deliberation. Come out of the paralysis. Come towards something you cannot yet see, but somehow know is calling you. And yes, Peter did sink a little, but Jesus didn't let him drown. He reached out his hand and caught him, and they walked back to the boat together. Isn't that beautiful? That even in his faltering, Peter wasn't alone. That even when his faith wobbled, grace steadied him. And that's the same grace that surrounds you right now. The grace that says you are allowed to try. You are allowed to step and stumble and try again. You are allowed to be imperfect in your process and still be deeply loved by the one who calls you forward. I think for too long you've believed that indecision was keeping you safe. That if you just stayed in this neutral zone, you couldn't get hurt. But neutrality has its own kind of pain, doesn't it? It's the ache of not knowing who you could become. It's the quiet grief of watching time pass while you stay in the same place. It's the exhaustion of running in circles inside your own head. And at some point, the risk of staying still becomes greater than the risk of moving. I believe you've reached that point. I believe something in you has shifted. Maybe it happened gradually. Maybe it happened in a single moment of clarity. But you're different now than you were a month ago, a year ago. You've grown in ways you haven't fully acknowledged yet, and that growth is preparing you for what's next. Speak to that for a moment. Because I think sometimes we underestimate the work that's already been done inside us. We focus so much on what we haven't figured out that we forget to honor what we've already overcome. Think about where you were 5 years ago. Think about the things that used to devastate you, that now you can carry with more steadiness. Think about the prayers you once prayed desperately, that have since been answered in ways you didn't expect. Think about the version of yourself that thought they couldn't survive what you have, in fact, survived. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for. You are wiser than you realize. And you are more ready than your fear would have you believe. The scripture tells us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind. That means your ability to think clearly, to weigh options, to sense what's right for you, is a gift from God. Your judgment is not as broken as you think. Your instincts are not as untrustworthy as doubt has told you. You are capable of making wise choices. And when you combine that capability with prayerful surrender, you have everything you need to move forward. Not forward into perfection, but forward into growth. Forward into the next chapter. Forward into the person you're still becoming. I know you've been carrying so many voices in your head. The voice of someone who doubted you. The voice of past failures reminding you of what went wrong. The voice of comparison telling you others have it figured out and you. But those voices are not the voice of God. The voice of God does not condemn you. It convicts, yes. It challenges, yes. But it does so with hope attached. It says, you can do better, not you are worthless. It says, come closer, not stay away until you're fixed. It says, I believe in who you're becoming, not I'm disappointed in who you are. And today, I want you to let that be the voice you follow. The voice that called you out of darkness. The voice that met you in your lowest moments and didn't walk away. A voice that has been patient with you even when you weren't patient with yourself. That's the voice worth listening to. That's the voice that knows what's truly best for you, on the other side of whatever decision you finally make. Now, I want to pause here and speak practically for a moment. Because I know spiritual encouragement is good, but sometimes we need something we can hold on to. So here's what I want to invite you to do. Not as a demand, but as a gentle suggestion. Sometime in the next day or so, find a quiet space, not a perfect one, just a quiet one, and write down the decision you've been avoiding. Just name it. Don't try to solve it yet. Just put it on paper. Then write down what you're really afraid of. Not the surface fear, but the deeper one. What do you think this choice will reveal about you? What are you afraid you'll prove if things don't go well? Guests at your table. Don't try to chase them away. Just acknowledge them. And then, with those fears in full view, ask yourself one simple question. If I trusted that God would meet me regardless of the outcome, what would I do? That answer is often clearer than we expect. Because once we remove the pressure to be right, we often find the freedom to be faithful. And faithfulness doesn't mean having the perfect answer. It means taking the next honest step. I truly believe that you've already been preparing for this moment. Every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried, every night you've spent wrestling with this, it's all been shaping you. And now, it's time to let that shaping produce something. Decision. But because you owe yourself the chance to see what's on the other side. For those of you who have been blessed by this time together, I simply ask that you consider subscribing to the Angels Decode channel if you haven't already. Not because clicking a button is magical, but because this space was created for people like you. People who are searching for truth without manipulation. People who are hungry for peace without pressure. People who want their faith encouraged, not exploited. And if this message found you at the right time, perhaps there are others who need to find it too. A share, a comment, a word of encouragement in the comments for someone else who might be struggling. Those small acts create ripple effects we'll never fully measure. But I don't say that to pressure you. Because community matters. Because we're all walking this path together. And the kind words you leave might be exactly what someone else needs to read tomorrow. Now, let me return to where we started. You, standing at the crossroads. Feet that once felt frozen. A heart that once felt paralyzed by possibility. I want you to see yourself differently now, not as someone who can't decide, but as someone who has been gathering wisdom for this very moment. The waiting was not wasted. It was preparation. And now preparation is meeting its purpose. The psalmist wrote that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I don't know what your night has looked like. Evening. Maybe it's stretched across seasons and years. But I want you to hold on to the truth that morning is coming. And morning doesn't always come with the sunrise. Sometimes morning is a decision made in faith. Sometimes mourning is a choice to believe that God is still working. Sometimes mourning is the courage to stop waiting for perfect and start walking toward possible. You have everything you need for this next step. Not for the whole journey, no, but for the next step. And that's all God asks of you. One step at a time, one faithful decision at a time, one moment of trust at a time. Jesus told his followers not to worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has enough worries of its own. And I think what he was really saying is that you're not meant to carry the weight of the whole path at once. You're only meant to carry today. And today is asking you one question. Will you trust me enough to move? That's it. That's the invitation. Not to be perfect, not to have it all figured out. Just to trust and to move. I'm praying for you as I say these words, not in a general, generic way, but with specific intention. I'm praying for peace to replace your anxiety, for clarity to replace your confusion, for courage to rise up in the places where fear has been squatting. I'm praying that the God who began a good work in you will give you the confidence to participate in its unfolding, not as a passive observer, but as an active partner in what he's building. And I'm praying that when you look back on this season someday, you won't see it as a time of indecision. You'll see it as the quiet before the breakthrough, the hush before the hallelujah, the stillness before the storm of goodness that swept you into a new chapter. That chapter is waiting for you, not in some distant future, but in the very next choice you make. God bless you deeply. May his peace guide you. May his love sustain you. May his wisdom light your path. And may you find the courage today to become everything he's been preparing you to be. You are loved. You are seen. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next step. Beloved is going to change everything. Not because you got it perfect, but because you finally decided to trust. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this journey. Now go. Go in peace. Go in faith. Go knowing that the one who calls you forward will never leave your side.